Back, everybody, on meals. We're gonna have a special treat. We're gonna make a double batch of Apple Cyser. Now, as I alluded to the other day, Cyser is kind of like when you take hard apple cider and when you go to make a wine with it, or what essentially would be a mead, and you use honey instead of any other kind of sugar. So, just getting the stickers off my apples here because I'm going to add a little extra flavor with. I got the Granny Smith apples to put in them, hopefully, just to add a little bit sour to it. Star sand everything, and I've got my little jug of sanitization here off to the side just in case I ever happen to need it during the course of today's events. Little nod to City Setting Brews. They know what it means if they ever see this. But first things first, I've got my my honey. No, not my girlfriend. I don't have one of those. My actual honey off to the side here in a pot of hot water, not boiling water. I didn't boil it. You don't want to heat the honey that much because if it starts to crystallize, then you change the formula of the honey. Just one honey, okay? But you get it warm, it pours a little bit easier. Now, the weird thing is when I went to order, well, not order, but to get the honey, I couldn't find, I'm using 2 pounds of honey per gallon that I'm making here. I couldn't find a 32-ounce thing of honey. So I had to get 2 different sizes. I had to get 2 different sizes. All right, we're good there. And I've got to take 8 ounces out of the big one because the big one is 40 ounces and I need 64 total because 32 and 32 is 64. But I've got the big one that I've got to take 8 ounces out of. To get that to 32. And then the little one, which is 24 ounces. So I can use all of that in the one, and I can use a partial one in the other. Of course, I still have good things on it. But yeah, so, but I mean, surprisingly enough, it wasn't that expensive. 2 pounds of honey is about $12, $13, something like that total. So it wasn't horrible as far as my hands are all wet because I sanitize my hands too. And then I pulled these straight out of the hot water pot. So that's all kinds of fun. So I need to pour out about 8 ounces. Oh, and of course, what happens, but my thing goes off. Uh-oh. Well, let's say I've got about an ounce in there. Not quite there. Right about there. All right. So we'll just put this off to the side until we make the second one. Getting one of these scales is key to some of this because as it is, honey does not transfer well from basin to basin without leaving most of itself behind. I'm going to take my sunglasses off too, by the way. I meant to do that like right away and then I forgot. But everything I got here, except for the actual brewing stuff, is all courtesy of Kroger as of right now. I was going to get the honey off of Amazon, but it would have taken until tomorrow or Monday to get it. And I wanted to do this video yesterday or today. So there's 2 pounds worth. I'm going to save the honey that's in this bottle left over to show you a little trick for how to get it out for the other one, because I did go a little bit over the 8 ounces that I pulled out of the other one, and I want to try and keep the measurements as close as possible. The gallon jugs came with the lids, and they actually came with the airlocks. I got those off of Amazon also. Apple juice, less than $4 a gallon. I think it was like 3 something a gallon actually. So it was like $8 for 2 gallons of this. The only thing you want to make sure of when you're getting apple juice to do this with, the ingredients in this is water, apple juice concentrate, ascorbic acid, which is just vitamin C. That's it. You don't want any kind of preservatives in there because that will screw up your yeast, which I've just got regular champagne yeast. I haven't gotten the fancy stuff yet, but this stuff is clocked at getting your stuff to approximately 13% alcohol, which means it can go like 12 to 15%, depends on how good the yeast is feeling on a given day. Next, what we want to do is we want to get this mixed up, because honey, as I said before, notoriously does not like to mix well with others. So we're just going to take a little bit of our apple juice that we're going to use. And since I've already sanitized the knife that I'm going to use to cut the apples with, and I don't have, oh, I do have a regular lid that I sanitized already that does not have a hole in it. So that'll make this even easier. You just want to shake it. Get it nice and mixed up, because it will, supposedly it will ferment if you don't do anything with the honey. Just let it sit. It'll get through the juice. The yeast will get down there. It'll do its job. It'll turn all the sugar in the honey into alcohol and carbon dioxide, but it'll take it longer. It makes it work more. And I don't know about you, but I don't know anything, any living thing ever, that likes to work harder than it has to. Now listen to that again, harder than it has to. I got no problem with hard work. Everybody should do some hard work every now and then, but don't ever do it harder than you need to, because you know what? There is nothing that will piss you off more than after you finish a hard job and find out you made it twice as hard as you needed to. And all of y'all that have felt that before know what I'm talking about. So you just want to make it as easy as you possibly can for the yeast, because as it is, this is going to take minimum 2 to 4 weeks. It could take up to 6 weeks, depending on A, the kind of yeast you get, and B, the amount of sugar you've got in it, and C, the conditions. And one thing that I am kind of upset at myself about is I thought I had gotten a hydrometer, which is what you use to measure the sugar level as you go on. and you can use the calculations from that to determine the percentage of alcohol. I pulled that out, and I had bought it months ago. And when I'm reading the instructions for it, I realized, oh, I got the wrong hydrometer. This is for if I've already stilled it, which that's another video. It's a couple months away. I haven't gotten to still yet, but that's coming. I still have to get a license for that. But in the state of Ohio, the license just to still it, especially if you're just going to like sell it to friends or sell it cheap and not have like a bar or something, it's cheap. Or you can just get a still and do it yourself and not tell anybody and hide it. Works for moonshiners, right? Let's see here. I'm told that when you're doing this, you want to shake it until you think you're done, and then shake it a little bit more. Which it looks like we're right about there. All right. So this is what it's going to look like after you've got the honey. After you've got the honey and your juice all nice and mixed up. I don't need the scale anymore today, so we're putting you over here somewhere out of the way. And we get to move on to what we're going to do next. First, before I do anything else, I'm going to put just a little bit more of my juice in there. Not going to fill it all the way up. We're going to wait until we got everything in there that we need to get in there before we fill it all the way up. Because you want to fill it up to a little bit above where the bend is on this one. You don't want to fill it to the brim or anything like that, because you want to leave room. Yeah, that's good. You want to leave room for while it's doing its thing, because the few times that I've done this, I haven't had this happen. I did have the first time I had the carboy and it didn't quite do it. And the carboy is the one that's got the tapered thing. I'm never going to use those again because they are a pain in the butt to get stuff into and clean out. That's why I like these ones. Nice and wide. You can fit your hand in there. You're good to go. But once these take off, if your yeast is uber excited, it's going to expand a little bit. And if it gets up into your airlock, you got a problem. And it's not a good problem to have, because you can save it if it's one of those things where you're checking on it daily or multiple times a day. Like I've got the hot sauce fermenting that I did last week for you guys. I'm just fascinated by the bubbles coming up out of it. So I'm looking at it a couple, 3 times a day, because I work midnights. So when I get home, I sleep for about 4 or 5 hours. And the rest of the day, I'm playing on TikTok, playing on video games, watching TV, and watching peppers ferment. So if you're one of those kind of people that you're going to be looking at it constantly and you see, oh crap, it got into the airlock, you can swap out the airlock, you're good to go. But if you're one of those people that's putting it in a closet and setting it aside and you're only checking on it once or twice a week, if it gets up in your airlock and you don't notice it for like a week, you don't want to drink what's in there, because it ain't good. It ain't gonna be good no more. Because what makes these work is it doesn't let stuff get in to go bad, but it lets the stuff breathe. And if these get up into your airlock and they can't breathe, it's gonna go rancid pretty quick. Because all fermentation really is controlled rotting of your food. And all I'm doing right now is I'm using these apples. They're going to impart a little bit of flavor into the brew, and B, they're going to add a little bit more sugar for the yeast to do their thing with. And you don't need to make a lot of cuts to it, just enough. You know, I mean, like, I don't want to leave these pieces too big. It's really tempted to take a bite of this right now, but today's a fast day. Because I had a cheat day yesterday, and I need a fast day today to catch up with it. Whoa. And note to self, you don't want to just splash them in there. And you don't have to take the core out or anything. Like I said, this is literally just food for your yeast and giving your brew just a little bit extra flavor. And I didn't want to do just 1 per gallon, so that's why I got 2 apples to do. And I went with the Granny Smiths instead of what I really like the Fuji apples because those are nice and sweet. But the Granny Smiths have that sour to them. And I am really big on that sour. Like, I love Sour Patch Kids. And I know it ain't going to come out that sour. But if I could get a nice sweet sour going, oh yeah. So we're just going, almost lost that one. I think I did have a seed go flying. But, and I wanted to chop up some raisins to put in this. But I forgot to check to see if I actually had any raisins left. Because I had raisins left from the last time I did this. Because the raisins, A, they impart a little bit of flavor. And B, they actually have, I've got it right here, nutrient. This is called yeast nutrient, which means I don't really need the raisins, but I wanted to put them in there for the flavor. But they have nutrients and tannins in them that help with the actual process of the yeast converting everything to alcohol. And by the time I went and picked everything up and got home, I forgot to check to see if I already had raisins at home. I find out I don't have raisins at home. So this time around, I'm not going to be raisins, but maybe next time I do a video of this for you guys, I'll have raisins for it so we can do maybe a contrast and compare at the finish of it. I'm trying to get them all in there without having to stir it. There we go. All right. Now, yep, I don't think we have anything else to worry about except for getting the yeast in there in a second. Oh, and I realized what I forgot to grab after I tell you guys about the nutrient. I'll be right back. We're going to hit the pause. And we're back. I forgot measurement device for the yeast nutrient, and I also have pectic enzyme. Not necessary at all for it. It just helps clear the liquid as it's doing its thing. So it's not, it's absolutely totally unnecessary. But if you'd seen how cloudy the last time I did this was, it doesn't look appetizing, although it tasted great. It just makes it pretty. That's basically all it does. It's not necessary or needed at all whatsoever. But we're going to add some of that into we'll add more after if I need to. I'm going to have to mix it up after I put the yeast in anyway. So we're going to take, this is Red Star, which I realized I forgot to grab scissors, but I got a knife, so we're good. Red Star Premier Classique Active Dry Yeast. And it's got French on there too. Now, technically you can do up to 5 gallons with one of these packets. The cheap ones, and this isn't a cheap one, but the ones that aren't like specially formulated for anything really, they are maybe $1 a packet. So it's it's useless to try to be that frugal with it. The more yeast you put in there, the better it works anyway. So I've got a gallon vessel. I've got yeast. I just dumped the whole packet in there. Whack your packet. I was told that by somebody once upon a time. Special key also is, if you're ever doing videos of this, make sure you have a trash bag or box right next to you close by, so you're not just throwing it on the floor. It's helpful. But we did that. Let's get the yeast nutrient. Now, the instructions, I believe, say 1 teaspoon per gallon. I'm going to put a heaping teaspoon in there so I've got a little bit extra. So there we go, a heaping teaspoon. So it's basically a little bit more than a teaspoon. Get all of it in there. And then we're going to open up no, I just did the nutrient. The pectic enzyme, which is also, if I recall correctly, I left my glasses over there. I think this is a teaspoon per gallon as well. Oh, this is half a teaspoon per gallon. Half a teaspoon per gallon. Which I've never opened this before. Never used it, just got it a couple months ago. Haven't made any of this stuff in the last few months. So this is my first time using this. Brand new, fresh. Open her up. Now it ended up on the floor. That one went in. So we need a half teaspoon of this. So let me look at these. That is my 1/4 teaspoon. That is my half teaspoon. Use my 1/4 teaspoon instead of my half teaspoon, because my half teaspoon somehow appears to have gotten some oil on it, and I don't know how that happened. 2 heaping 1/4 tablespoons equals a little more than a half teaspoon. All right. So we're going to leave those there for right now, because we're going to need them again in a couple minutes anyway. Oh, it's like flour all over the place. All right. So now what we want to do is top off how much we're going to put in there. I'm going to use the closed off lid one more time, and I'm not going to shake it around like I did with the honey. We're just going to give her a twirl. And all this is going to do is make sure we've got the yeast and everything down in your brew like we need it to. Boom. Just tapping off the excess fluid that may have gotten up in there, which a little bit left. And now we're going to put our airlock on it, which I already have sanitized and filled with water. It's got, these things are nice because they've got the little lines on there that tell you where it needs to be when it's equal for both sides. And then after I put the water in there, I put just a dribble of the Star Sand in there, because it's not going to get down back into your stuff. Positive pressure. It's always pushing out. It's never sucking stuff in. So that should be working within the next 12 to 48 hours. And I just realized I only put one apple in there. I got to talking and I wasn't paying attention to what I was doing, so we're just going to chop this up quick and we'll just throw it in there. It's not going to hurt anything. I didn't overfill it, so we should be good. Now, when you are putting fruit and stuff in there, though, the big thing that you want to remember is you don't want a bunch of it that's not down in the water. That's all you should really worry about, is you don't want a bunch of it that's... That's a good thing that I didn't use this lid to shake it up with, because that's not going to make a mess or anything. Boom. Boom. All you can do when you make mistakes, people, is your best to correct them. And we all make mistakes. Put those in there. Okay. It is a good thing I did not fill that up any fuller than that, because that is right about the limit where you want it, right there. Let's see if you guys can see that right there. You really don't want it much higher than that, and those will stay under the water. You don't have to worry about that. You don't have to put any kind of a weight in there like if you were fermenting vegetables or anything like that. All right. Now it's done. And like I said, 12 to 48 hours. Sometimes it starts pretty quick. I didn't pre-soak that yeast, so I probably won't see any kind of bubbling action on it till later tonight sometime, which it's not abnormal at all. Nothing wrong with that. Now, we're going to move on to the second gallon, which we're making the exact same way we made the first gallon. I don't need to measure this out or anything because I already know. There's only 32 ounces left in this because I took 8 ounces out already, which I actually took a little bit more than that out. So just let it finish dripping. And what we're going to do is we're going to pour some of the apple juice into the bottle here. So I just realized I didn't bring a funnel over there with me, and I didn't sanitize one either. So we're going to have some fun trying to just get some apple juice into the bottle, because I am not going to pause it just to go sanitize a funnel. We're going to just roll with it. Once it stops, that's when we're going to take it out and decide that's time to just go ahead and put the apple juice in there, shake it up, get as much of that out as we can. And I do have a second gallon of apple juice over here. You always want to get, I mean, you know, you're not always going to use all of it, especially when you're putting 2 pounds worth of sugar, honey, syrup, whatever. Because we are going to do agave sometime, so I can try and make some tequila. That'll be after I get the still and whatnot, but we'll see how that goes. I'm told that's a bear to try to get to ferment, so before I actually do a video of that one, I might do a run just so I know what I'm doing with it. I know here on Meals Conquers Everything, we kind of just fly by the seat of my pants most of the time. Well, I do like to kind of try to make it look like I know what's going on, so that if any of you actually have questions, I can answer them. Or at the very least, do my best to answer them, rather than just be like, Because if you understand how, what, or why this stuff works, it is much easier. Fill that up about halfway. We're going to do the same thing with the other one. Might as well just do it right now. See, look at how much that honey was left. I might have even undersold how much honey I thought I overpoured from this one, but it was a good 30 grams over, so. All you need to do is fill her up about halfway, because you want room in there to shake it, because you're going to shake it the same way I just shook the other stuff. But we're going to do double bottles here. Save a little time. And all this is doing is getting your last little bit of honey out of there, so you can get all the honey that you need in there. One of the good things I like about the using honey instead of sugar or whatever else you can think of, corn syrup, which I'm not happy with corn syrup right now. Corn syrup's bad for you. Bad for you. Honey is nature's natural sugar. It never spoils. It's actually good for you in the amounts that you're supposed to have it, and not just like, but a teaspoon here and there to sweeten your drinks or your food is more than healthy for you. And it looks like we got pretty much all that honey out of there. What's left in there is just foam. Also, I was told that don't worry about the foam and the aeration. Stuff needs oxygen to work. You just don't want to let the oxygen to it while it's working. Get all the oxygen in it beforehand. And then a few weeks when we go to rack it on its first rack, which I'll show you what that is. That's just when you move it to a new vessel. You're going to get a little bit more oxygen in there than anyway. My lid, so I can shake her up. You know what? I should put some more juice in there than that. I'm going to have to open the next thing at juice here in a minute. Yeah, we need more in there to shake that up, because that's mostly honey. But one of these days I might actually do a video where we just use this to do the fermentation, because City Sitting Brews did that as well. You just drill a hole in there, put one of these on it, use some glue, sanitize it before you start everything, and you're good. You could do that with this. All you got to do is take however much juice out of it, of the sugar or whatever else you're going to add in there, so that you've got it filled to about, but we might do that video someday. That would be an interesting one, I think, because I've never actually seen it done. I've just seen it done on YouTube by a couple different people. And I think that might be a fun one. We might have to try that one. It would save me a little bit of money in these glass jars. I did find the plastic versions, but I don't want to use the plastic versions to do my brewing type stuff in, because I'm kind of afraid of what kind of flavor it might impart. I'd rather use glass for my brewing. I wouldn't mind using the plastic if it's for my fermenting for the vegetables and whatnot. But for brewing, for making my alcohol, I'm kind of particular about my alcohol. Still got a little bit of honey down the side on that one. But yeah, they're not expensive, but they do cost money. All right. Oh, that smells nice. That honey and apple juice. It smells so nice. All right. Oh, speaking of smelling nice, any of you that watched me do the peppers last week for the hot sauce, the fermenting the hot sauce, was just sitting right there. I took a whiff of these airlocks have vents on them, so it'll actually let the air out. And today was the first day I got curious as to how it smelled. And I didn't want to open it up just yet because I think I'm going to let it go another week, because considering there's no sugar added in that whatsoever, all I did was put salt and water in it. The only sugar that was in it is what was ever in the onion and the peppers. I don't think garlic has a whole lot of sugar in it, but whatever natural sugars might have been in the garlic. It's still fermenting like crazy. It is just farting up a storm. A week later. And I took a whiff just above the airlock. Oh my God, it smells so good. It doesn't smell hot. It's all habaneros and it doesn't smell hot. But God, it smells good. And when I say it doesn't smell hot, I like spicy stuff. So, like my ex-mother-in-law thought onions were hot. So, I mean, I'm sure there's probably some of you guys out there like that where you don't really handle the heat that well. And you might actually think onions are hot. So if you were to take a whiff of this stuff, after I just told you it doesn't smell hot, you might be like, oh my God, how do you not think that smells hot? So yeah, if you're a pepperhead like me, you might not think the same thing, but it doesn't smell hot, but it smells delicious. And I want to let it ferment as long as it needs to. I don't want to cut it short, especially with it smelling that good and still bubbling up. And it's kind of like the same approach you want to take when you're doing the alcohol, or when I should say brewing the alcohol, when you're going to make this stuff. Because if that yeast is still working, that means it's still making alcohol. It's still increasing your ABV. So you don't want to stop it from doing that. You want it to get to its full potential, especially if you like a dry alcohol. And those of you that don't know, dry means not sweet, because you can always back sweeten it after the fact, so that way you can sweeten it to your liking rather than trying to finagle the formula so it doesn't quite use all the sugar, so you have a little sweetness in there. It's like, no, just if you want it to be a particular level of sweetness, add some sweetener to it after it's about done. And on top of that, I dropped my up. We're good. No bruising. We're good. Okay. Now, where was I? Oh yeah. Plus, if you don't want to use like I was looking at maybe using just a regular sweetener, not anything with sugar in it that would ferment. But if you want to use honey or brown sugar or something like that, if you add that to it before you were to pasteurize it, if you were to pasteurize it, I should say, because you don't have to pasteurize it. Some people like to after they bottle it, because that kills off the yeast or anything else that might have got in there after the fact. But if you put it in there before you were to pasteurize it, it'll give you a little bump on your ABV. And ABV is alcohol by volume. Whereas some people talk in percentages, some people talk in proofs. I do both because I know both. Basically, a proof goes up to 200. You have, as in cut it in half, a proof to get your percentage. How that ever ended up coming to be, I have no idea. I wasn't there when whoever decided they wanted to use gunpowder proof alcohol, or how they came up to a number with up to 200 as pure alcohol. If you're putting a little bit of gunpowder in a little bit of liquid that you think is flammable, why are you using the number 200 instead of 100 to figure out how flammable it is or how much alcohol it's got in it? Like I said, I wasn't there. I think it was pirates, so it's a very Navy thing. But yeah, so like if something is 80 proof, it's 40% alcohol. So on this, we're looking for 12 to 15% alcohol by volume, ABV. So the proof would be almost 30 proof, or about 30 proof. As you can see, we didn't forget the second apple this time. Finishing that up right now. Like I said before, core and everything. You're not eating it, so you don't need to worry about taking the core out. And that's the other thing I like about the Fuji apples. If you get ones that aren't too huge, the core is not very big. And you can just eat the core, and the core tastes just as good as everything else. These bigger ones like this, the seeds are bigger, the core is bigger. The core is just not appetizing on those ones. But we're gonna open up the second thing of apple juice that I've got. And we're gonna not quite top it off, just like the last one. Just fill her up a little bit. Not quite top her off. I mean, as you can see, I got 2 gallons of apple juice to make 2 gallons of Cyser. By the time we're said and done, I'll use maybe a little bit more of this. So I won't have quite used an actual gallon and a half of apple juice. But if I were to have used a little less honey, like I could have just gone a pound each. The alcohol would have been a little bit lower. It wouldn't be as sweet. It would have a different flavor. And if I didn't put the apple in there, that's all stuff taking up space. So I'm using less juice. If I were just using straight honey, nothing else in there, and I was only using half as much honey, I'd probably already be at a gallon and a half or less, and I would use almost the whole 2 gallons. But that's stuff to consider. Like if you are really budget conscious, and you know, I'm not going to need 2 gallons of apple juice to make 2 gallons of Apple Cyser. I'm just going to get a gallon and a half. And you would probably be right where you needed to be with that. It's not going to save you that much money, like $3, maybe. Shake her around a little bit. Get that apple all the way down in there. But like I always say, when I'm working a little bit of overtime, and I think to myself, this 4 hours is only another $100 in my pocket, but anymore now, $100 is a tank of gas. I drive a truck. or Am 1500 Rebel. I filled it up. It was damn near empty yesterday. I filled it up. Just shy of $90. So yeah. I understand if you want to save a couple bucks and not get stuff that you know you're not going to use, but I also enjoy drinking apple juice on occasion, even though right now my diet doesn't allow me to. But I can put, this is my yeast. Like I said, we're going to do 1 heaping tablespoon, or no, this is my yeast nutrient. I don't want to do that yet. Talking to you guys, not paying attention to what I'm doing. I want to put the yeast in first. Duh. All right. Now, I was told these don't tear. That's why I used the knife on the last one. So let's see what happens. Yeah, they don't tear. All right. Cut that open just a scotch. We're going to dump you in there. Whack your packet. Make sure you get all your yeast in there. I believe the site that I got that from, the City Sting Brews, actually has shirts that say "Thwack your packet." I need to get one. If you guys want one, go to their YouTube channel. It's just City Sting Brews. They're fun to watch and they are informative as all hell. They're not who actually got me into this, but they are who I learned everything from, because they talk you through everything. And they've got so many different wines and meads and ciders that they've done, and ciders. Okay. That was my nutrient. Now I want to switch to the pectic enzyme, which is going to just clear it out. Like I said before, it's not really doing anything other than just making it pretty. Just putting lipstick on the pig, that's all it's doing. Two heaping half teaspoons, or I'm sorry, quarter teaspoons to make a half teaspoon. Put the lid back on that. And these, North Mountain Supply is where I got these through, and I believe that's who I got these particular gallon jugs through. I know I got a bunch of the airlocks through them, but they're on Amazon. I don't know if they've got an actual website of their own, but they're on Amazon. Their stuff is not that expensive. Like, I think both of these bottles were maybe $5 each. Don't quote me on that, but I know they weren't pricey at all. But like I said before, you don't need the pectic enzyme if you don't want to spend the money on it. And you don't need the yeast nutrient if you want to just put some raisins in there. But you don't even have to put the raisins in there or put the yeast nutrient in there. It just helps the yeast do its job. It just makes it a little bit easier. Swirl them around. Swirly. Swirly! Yeah, I'm getting a little slap happy. I only had a few hours of sleep today. I'm probably going to get a nap in before I go to work tonight. Get their dribblies out. All right. Good thing I don't need that anymore. It just fell on the floor. I'll put a little bit more of the apple juice in there. Like I said, don't fill it too full. I mean, these bigger ones, it's kind of harder to screw that up. But you don't want to take it much higher than what the top of the foam is before it starts to bend into that lid. That should give you more than enough room to not have to worry about that. Put the airlock on top. And those of you that remember Ronco, set it and forget it. That's it. Now you got 2 gallons of Apple Cyser brewing, and they should be ready in 2 to 4 weeks, possibly 6 weeks. You got to be patient with this stuff. Don't rush it. because there's no real way to rush it other than getting a different kind of yeast. And that stuff is expensive as hell. I found that last night. You can get the stuff that does it in 48 hours.